Aimsy here of Aimsy's Antics. Welcome to my channel. I hope you're well today because I have a baking recipe for you today. It was my mum's birthday last week and I decided to make her a cake to celebrate because why not? Cakes are there to be enjoyed and birthdays are a perfect excuse to have some cake. So in this video I have got a pistachio and rose cake recipe to share with you with rose Swiss meringue buttercream. I always get that tongue tied, so I got it right this time. And this is basically a bit like the Persian love cake, which is quite popular, and it is a bit more of a denser cake but beautiful swirly icing on top. So if it sounds like something you would like to have a go at making, or maybe just watching, then let's get baking. To make the pistachio cake, you are going to need 95 grams of ground pistachios, 250 grams of plain flour, 190 grams of caster sugar, 180 ml of vegetable oil, I am using rapeseed oil here, 3 large eggs, 1.5 teaspoon of baking powder, half a teaspoon of salt, a quarter teaspoon of ground cardamom, half a teaspoon of almond extract, 248 milliliters of milk, 2 tablespoons of lemon juice and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Start by pre-warming the oven to a gas mark 4 or 350 degrees Fahrenheit, as well as prepare your cake tins. I am using 8-inch round cake tins here and using some greaseproof paper to line them. Now this next step is so much easier if you have a food processor, however I don't, so I am using a pestle and mortar, and all you want to do is grind up those pistachios to resemble ground almond consistency. You want it a bit like a flour because it's going to be added to the flour, and whilst your pestle and mortar is out or food processor is out, you want to grind up some cardamom, and I use 3 cardamom pods for this. However, it does come through quite strong, so if you want a less cardamom taste, either leave this part out of the recipe or reduce the quarter tablespoon to half of that quarter, if you get what I mean. In a mixing bowl, you want to add in the flour, and I am sifting this in to get rid of any lumps and bumps that may be in it. And to the flour, you want to add the ground pistachios, baking powder, cardamom and salt, whisking these together or mixing them together until they are sort of combined. And then you're just going to set this aside and move on to the wet part of the mixture. In a large bowl, you want to add in your eggs. Now I don't have a stand mixer, but that would be really useful for this recipe. I am just using an electric whisk, but you can do it completely by hand as well. So to the eggs, you want to add in the vanilla, followed by the almond extract, and the almond extract is just there to enhance the flavour of that pistachio and give the cake that extra bit of nuttiness. And mix these together on a low mix with either electric whisk or your stand mix, and add in the sugar slowly until it is all combined together, making it really nice, thick and slightly fluffy, and it should be sort of tripled in volume. And then to this mix, you want to start beginning incorporating that vegetable oil, and as I said, I'm using rapeseed oil in here because I've heard that rapeseed oil makes cakes a little bit lighter. You want to gradually begin incorporating this, and you can see that it does start to change colour and consistency slightly. Next, you want to start incorporating that flour mixture to the wet ingredients, adding a few spoonfuls at a time and then mixing with your mixer. Then the next thing to add is the milk. So what you're going to do is alternate adding the milk and the flour. So one time you'll put the flour in and the next time you'll add the milk in, and keep going until you've got a little bit of flour and a little bit of milk left. When it comes to adding in the last part of the milk, you want to add in the 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, and this just helps incorporate it in to the mixture. Begin mixing this in and then add in your last bit of milk, followed by the last bit of the flour. Again, mixing it all together until everything is fully incorporated together. And then you want to place the cake batter into your waiting cake tins. Now this recipe does fill 2 of the 8-inch sandwich tins, however they are not fully filled, so you maybe want to adjust the measurements to suit your cake tins, or make another batch if you do want a larger cake. I ended up making one more batch, which got me another one of these sandwich tins as well as 5 cupcakes, so hopefully that will give you some idea. Then you want to just tap these down before placing them into the oven for around 50 to 60 minutes, or when they start to go golden brown on top, removing and allowing to cool on a cooling rack whilst you make the Swiss meringue buttercream. To make the rose Swiss meringue buttercream, you are going to need 4 to 5 large egg whites, 220 grams of granulated sugar, 340 grams of butter which is unsalted and cubed, 1 teaspoon of lemon essence, 60 milliliters of rose water, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and some pink food colouring. Before making the buttercream, you want to make sure your bowl is completely clean. So to do this, you want to place some lemon juice in and then rub it around and removing any excess. This will just cut through any grease that's in the bowl and stop the meringues from forming. Then you want to place this bowl on a bain-marie, is that how you say it? A bain-marie, which is basically the bowl over a hot pan of water, making sure that the water doesn't touch the bottom of the bowl. And then place in your egg whites followed with your granulated sugar and begin gently heating whilst mixing. You don't need to mix this or whisk this vigorously, you just want to make sure it doesn't catch because you don't want the eggs starting to scramble. Once the mixture reaches around 68 degrees to 71 degrees, you want to remove it from the heat, and then we're going to start whisking this. So what you want to do is put your stand mix or your electric whisk on to high and begin whisking like mad until it starts forming meringue and goes into stiff peaks. Now mine doesn't go into quite stiff peaks, but I carried on nonetheless, but you do want it slightly stiffer than what I have it here. Then gradually begin adding in parts of the butter. You want to make sure you add little bits at a time, making sure that it is fully incorporated before adding the next bit in. And you maybe want to reduce the speed a little bit on your mixer. And also, if you do have a stand mixer, change your attachment to the paddle because this makes the buttercream go that much better. Once the butter is incorporated, you then want to add in the 1/4 teaspoon of salt, followed by the teaspoon of lemon extract or essence, and giving this a little mix together. Once this is mixed a little bit, you then want to add in the rose water, and I decided to add it in little stages to make sure that it was fully incorporating into that meringue buttercream mixture. If you find that the buttercream is starting to curdle a little, then it may be too cool, so then you want to warm it up a little. If it is going to run it, then you maybe just want to chill it slightly and remix it to get it back to the correct consistency. Then you want to add in the food colouring, and obviously I'm using pink for the rose here, and just using a 1/4 teaspoon to colour it. Now ideally you want gel colouring and not liquid because it just incorporates it a lot better. Then place the buttercream into a waiting icing bag because we are going to crumb coat the cake ready for icing. Start by placing a small amount in the middle of your chosen cake board, spreading this out evenly. This is just going to act as a bit of a glue and keeping that cake attached to the cake board. Place on your bottom layer of cake and make sure you centralise it a bit better than what I have. I am a bit off centre here, and as you can see, I've not got the most delicate touch and part of the cake did break. Then using a bit of lemon curd, I am just going to add this to the middle layer. Now you can use the buttercream to go in between the layers, whichever you fancy, but I thought the lemon curd would help just cut through some of that sweetness and perfume of the rose and just give a really nice subtle lemony flavour. Then continue stacking up your cake layers, adding on more buttercream onto the next layer before, not buttercream, lemon curd, sorry, before adding on your final layer of cake. Then it is time to start the crumb coat of the cake. So this is basically, the buttercream is used to lock in all the crumbs so that it doesn't go on the final layer of buttercream, and it gives it a bit more of a polished look. And it looks pretty rough when you first do it. It does not look nice at all. But what you want to do is just smooth this down all around the cake, trying to get it as even as possible, and then using a scraper just to scrape away some of the excess, but filling in the crevices as well. Now it's not going to fully ice the cake, and you will still see bits of the cake, but that is what the crumb coat, sorry, is for. And just repeating this onto the top. Then you want to let this chill a little bit. I left mine overnight before attempting to ice the cake. Once the crumb coat is chilled, you want to remove it from the fridge or cool place and just let it soften slightly, and then begin placing over a fresh layer of that rose Swiss meringue buttercream all over the cake and smoothing this in, and then using the scraper to sort of pact this in and remove any excess, smoothing it down as you go. Now this can take a little bit of practice to get right and completely smooth, so just keep going, adding on layers and then removing them and smoothing them as you go. And for a bit of decoration on top of the cake, I'm going to make some petal roses. So what you need is a piping nail, I think it's called. So use a small bit of cardboard in a square and wrap this around with some tin foil or aluminium foil, however you want to call it, and create a little bit of a handle with this, because that is what you're going to use to hold the buttercream. We're also going to use this petal tip, and I can't remember what it's quite called, but I'll put it on the screen once I've remembered, and place a little bit on top of the tin foil and then a bit of greaseproof paper to hold the flower on. Then all you want to do is go around and create a little bit of a mound with the rose buttercream, and this will form the middle of that rose. Then with the largest part of the piping tip at the bottom, begin going around in small sections, creating small little, I guess, streaks of the buttercream. There's probably a more technical term for that. Wiping off any excess as you go, and you might need to keep doing this as you go around. Just keep going around that mound and you'll see it does start begin building some layers and petal looking shape. Now controlling the piping bag and the piping nail can be a little bit disastrous, so don't put it down like I did and smush a bit of your rose. But if you do this, then it's easily recoverable because it is still soft, that buttercream, and all you need to do is just put another sort of petal over the top. Not all flower petals are even, so what is really good about this is you can just do it to whatever you want and it'll still look good. Then allow these to chill a little bit and harden so that you can use them on top of the cake. Then you want to change up the nozzle tip to, I think it's a closed star tip, and this just creates really nice petal shapes, and you can just decorate all of the cake how you want. I think it looks like cherry blossoms and really pretty. Now this is really good if you have any blemishes to that icing, as I do, and it just hides some of them blemishes. Then it is time to add on the piped roses, which have hopefully hardened up a little bit, so use a bit of that buttercream to secure them on, placing a bit on the cake and then putting the rose on top, and hopefully with a bit more finesse than me, and finish it off with a sprinkling of crushed pistachios for a dash of green colour, and then the pistachio and rose cake is complete. There you have how to make a pistachio and rose cake with rose Swiss meringue buttercream. This has turned out divine and looks so pretty. We didn't want to cut into it once we had sort of presented it, it just looked too nice to cut into. When we did, we found that the cake is a little bit more denser, as I have said. So my tip for this would be to make sure that it is fully baked before you remove it from the oven. It might be better to be slightly overbaked than underbaked. You don't want any of that raw cake batter in the middle. And the flavours of this are packing. There's the cardamom, really does come through. So if you're not quite a fan of more perfumey flavours, as in cardamom and rosewater, Turkish delight type stuff, then this recipe probably isn't for you. But if you do, then give it a go, because it is super tasty. And the balance of that rose buttercream with the cardamom and pistachio flavours coming through is just divine. It tastes yummy. This was my first time making Swiss meringue buttercream, so I'm not quite sure if it is the right consistency and texture. This has got a bit more of a silky feel to it, and I think that might be the water content that was put in. I know when you make Swiss meringue buttercream, you're supposed to actually use gel colouring rather than the liquid food colouring because of the water content in it, and then adding in that rose water has just loosened it up a little bit as well. So the next time I make Swiss meringue, I think I'm going to go for a proper basic recipe and proper get this down to a T. But I don't like to make things simple, and I always like to go for a bit of a harder project whenever I am making something for the first time. So it still turned out yummy, and yeah, I think it looks pretty enough and is still edible, so hopefully it was made correctly. So let me know what you think in them comments below. Will you be having a go at making this cake? Have you made something similar? I would love to know your thoughts, so put it in them comments. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you are not already subscribed, to keep up with more of my creative antics, because there's a few more baking recipes to come up in the year, as well as lots more crafty makes, including the cake topper that I put onto this cake. I'm going to show you how to make your own cake toppers, hopefully next week or maybe a few weeks time. So be sure to be subscribed to that so you don't miss it, and hit that notification bell as well to let you know each time my videos go live. And check out my blog Aimsy's Antics, because there's always a ton more information over on the blog for you to check out. And with that said, I will see you in next week's video, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day and week, and I will see you next time. Bye!